All right, everyone, welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. That is former Georgia tight end Arthur Lynch. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Masters. I'm just kidding. Augusta National. It's Masters week. It's G-Days week. Artie Lynch, dude, I'm really pumped for this game on Saturday. We're just talking about it. Be up there. See these guys up close, man. Can't wait. A lot of young guys, a lot of transfers, too, that have a chance to really be contributors, key contributors next season. So I'm looking forward to this. We'll jump right into it. Important news for you guys, really my only nugget of the day news-wise. Five-star QB Jared Curtis, former Georgia commit, number one quarterback in the country. He's down between Georgia and Oregon. Now, this was a big weekend for him and for Georgia. He was going to host them at G-Day among, a ton of other blue-chip prospects that Georgia's going to bring in to Athens. And he's actually backed off that visit plan in order to attend his prom. According to Dog Central, Graham Coffee. So that's an interesting. Hey, man, go enjoy your prom. But it is kind of a little disappointing for Georgia here because they wanted to host him because he's committing on May 5th. So that's the news nugget. Now, it could mean just he's attending his prom. And honestly, it sounds like he might have already made up his mind. I would assume so with May 5th here coming up pretty quickly. But something to note. Practice notes, we'll jump into those here. Rave reviews on the offense from Saturday's scrimmage. From what I've heard, I think Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi are really kind of leading that charge. Both are really looking good here. I think Gunnar, as far as him, what do you want to see? Want to see command, and that's what he's kind of showing. Command of the offense, making quick decisions and getting it to the right guy. Puglisi, just arm talent, man. And I think he's starting to catch up to speed, right? And that game pace for him is a really difficult adjustment for guys at this level coming into it because, remember, he didn't have that spring last season. He has it this year, so this is really his first true spring. And he's getting reps, a lot of reps, obviously, with the backups and then some ones here and there. And his arm talent is really showing off. Zachariah Branch, serious problem in coverage. You're hearing it from the DBs from Georgia. You're hearing it from Kirby Smart. And he's showing it on the field. I mean, he's really, really quick. He's got that intermediate quickness, but also as a straight line guy, he can run past you. So we're really excited to see him and what he can do Saturday. Maybe he'll show a little bit of that off. And Colby Young. Colby Young, Georgia's, getting the benefit of giving him back another year after he was suspended for most of the season last year. Came into his own right in the first couple games, caught a couple touchdowns. Big body dude, and he is playing well from what I'm hearing. Cornerback-wise, interesting to see this group here. Ellis Robinson has put in some serious work in the weight room, it looks like. Seeing some pictures comparing that to last year. No surprise there. But, dude, I mean, that should help him hold up as a tackler. And that's what Georgia needs. You need to be multifaceted here. And I think that's where some issues lie last year with Daniel Harris and Julian Humphrey there as a tackler. He has turned some heads in coverage, and, that's expected. That's his forte. But it's against a really talented group of receivers. And I heard Noah Thomas talk about it this week, the Texas A&M receiver transfer, about Ellis Robinson and how he is really molding into an option at CB2, which is what Georgia fans want to hear. Georgia fans wanted to see him play all last year. Really didn't, right? It's hard for a true freshman to start in this system, but I think he has an opportunity to really earn some reps right now, right? Double down on fall camp, continue to grow, and I think we're going to see a lot of him. That's not taking anything away from Daniel Harris. I've heard good things about him this spring too, but something to watch here. There's a rotation there at CB2. I think there will be for a while. Kirby Smart, DB-wise, the safety group is kind of a concern. Well, a concern. There's talent there. The experience isn't. Dan Jackson, Malachi Starks, gone. Kyron Jones, a former three-star running back that Georgia's asked to play DB, had never played the position until getting to Athens. Kirby Smart spoke highly of him this past week, and I've heard some rave reviews about him as far as his playing ability this spring. I think it's interesting because he has the athleticism, the size. It's about learning the position to play it at this level. And I think just because we're seeing him getting a lot of reps now, and if he does impress enough and show, it could be in the right spot, really. We hear that Kirby Smart talk about that all the time, being in the right spot as a defender. He has to get that, right? He has to show the coaches he can be relied upon and do that in the right way. But it's just a name to note. Don't be surprised if you see him out there making plays on Saturday, maybe in the fall as well. Tight end, Artie's your forte, baby. We talk about this group a lot. We rarely mention Jaden Riddell. He's sitting behind Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky. But how he's practiced so far, man, I keep hearing his name come up. So I'm wondering if he could possibly take that H-back kind of inline role here and there that Benjamin Urasek was used at. Now, he's put everywhere. He was kind of like the Swiss Army tight end, I guess you could call it, right? And he did play that H-back spot a lot at times. So I think he could be an option here, it sounds like. And then Ethan Barbour also competed there, the true freshman. But Jaden has a whole year. He had spring last year. It's his second spring here. You could see him do that. Now, for a guy like that at H-back, what are the differences there that he'll be asked to do, you think, in this offense if we do see him there? And what does it take to be successful at that spot, do you think, Artie?
Yeah, so it's
Mike Bobo's offense, which you're very familiar with.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different, right? So it really depends on what personnel you have within each specific group, right? So like my redshirt sophomore year, we had like me, Orson, Aaron White, Bruce Figgins. Bruce Figgins actually moved full-time to fullback. And then I was kind of like a Y short yardage goal line situation, dude. Obviously, Orson was ended up being an All-American his junior year and left early. And Aaron White was kind of this tweener, if you will, athletic guy, really smart, could play a lot of different positions, but different build. So what spring ball is obviously for development, right? But it really comes down to the coaches are testing these players' knowledge, right? Because you have some freaks like the girlies of the world, right? When I was playing, they're just like so much better athletically and especially talented. But I think everyone else, like 90% of the roster, it's marginal, right? And so it really comes down to like, what do you know? How do you process things as they come to you? And can coaches put things on your plate mentally to where you can go and execute at a high level and they can expand their playbook, right? Because if we work with the coaches, they would draw stuff up all the freaking time. But a lot of the stuff that they want to draw up and maybe they run once or twice in practice but don't really see in the game is because they don't necessarily trust that the guys can mentally get there, right? It's not the case universally, but that's kind of how it works. So you talk about that H-back position, right? It really comes down to how much, football can this guy learn, which obviously he's been able to do a few different things. He's been being here. If he's getting more reps, that means the coaches trust him more to see what else he has out there. Mm-hmm. And then athletically, where does he fit in, right? So I think when you look at Delp, right, Delp is kind of a true wide tight end, big guy, wide body, a lot of experience. They probably trust him to play every position that they have within the playbook that, is designated or has a role for tight end, Y or H. But in reality, they want him to be a 3-down tight end. And if they go too tights, they want somebody that they can move around, right? I think the perfect example was 3 or 4 years ago when we had Darnell Washington, the Fitzpatrick kid, and then obviously, we had Brock Bowers, right? Brock Bowers was the move guy, right? I think back then I called, when we would discuss him is, can he be the queen on a chessboard, right? Can he move diagonally, side to side, back, and be able to attack you from a number of different places on the field? You have to be a special kind of athlete, but really you have to be able to process a ton of different information and process it at a high level because you're running routes that a Z would run, an X would run, that a fullback would run, that even sometimes a running back might run. And then obviously your traditional, tree routes that you have from a tight end. So for me, when I think about, hey, what could this kid's role be? Where does he fit athletically? I think when you see his name popping up, it's probably he's making a lot of plays and he's getting a lot of reps. Now he might be making plays and run a wrong route and just be, wide open. And, because he broke free and he runs, that used to happen, not all the time, but sometimes, right? And, the stats lines of the closed scrimmage says, oh, this tight end had like three catches for 2 touchdowns, but 2 of the routes were wrong routes, right? And then sometimes the play would get put in because of that. But I could digress and go talk about it for days. But I think really what spring ball ends up being is, hey, intellectually, where do these guys stand, right? And for the tight end specifically, the smarter that room is, right, top to bottom, the more we will see 2 tights or 3 tight end sets, right?
That's a good point.
The opposite can be true, right? My senior year, I was kind of the lone vet. Hugh Williams was a walk-on guy with short yardage that ended up playing a lot in serious downs. But Jay Rome was hurt a lot, and we really didn't have a true number 2 or 3 tight end a lot of the times. And because of that, we were basically an eagle the entire time, which is 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, and 1 tight end. And we played a lot of fullback that year as well because we ran the ball a lot. So that's a long-winded answer of saying it really comes down to how much can he process. And it seems to me that they're letting him have a lot of rope to go figure out what he can do and do well. And then my guess is Bobo is going to make an assessment at the end of spring, like where do we want to go moving forward? Do we want to have a lot of packages with 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, or do I really only feel comfortable with 1 guy being the guy, which I don't think will be the case because I think Lawson Lucky and Delp have both proven themselves time and time again.
Yeah. And you mentioned athleticism. That's what I keep hearing. I was going to stop you there, but I'll let you go. But athleticism, I think that's what the big draw for him is. And I heard he might be the fastest. When you think about Lawson Lucky, we've seen him run. Run neck and neck, but I've heard he's one of the fastest players on that offense, especially at his size. I mean, H-back just screams that position, man. And Brock Bowers had so much success there. Urasek makes some big plays last year at that position as well. But I think Georgia's a better offense when you have 3 guys like that. We've seen success there over those national championship seasons, and a large part of that was number 19. But still, so I'm excited for that group, right? I think they could do so many things.
And just one more thing on that, and this is broadly speaking about individual like position groups, right? Like if we have like 1 or 2 standout guys, but we don't have a ton of depth there, right? And fans sometimes get angry, like, man, why are we running the football? Or, like why aren't we in 2 tights more? Or why aren't we going 4 wide? Like a lot of it comes down to depth, right? And depth can be 2 things. Do you have enough healthy guys to run the offense that you want to run, right? And B, if you do have enough healthy guys, like how many of those guys do you trust to go out there and be able to make adjustments on the fly, right? Because it's easy to have a script and just call plays and practice and know what to do. But when you get out there and you make adjustments on the fly and they give you some defense that you really haven't been scouting for because they did a really good job of scouting your offense, right? It really disrupts how you game plan. And so coaches are basically setting their game plan starting in the spring because they want to see, A, are we going to have a healthy enough, position group to run the plays we want to run, and B, do we have enough guys that know what to do and when to do it? And I always try to tell people that, like when they get mad, like we're not running the ball enough. I was like, we only got 3 healthy running backs, and you really need 4. And out of those 4, you need 3 guys that know what to do no matter what. And I think that's another problem with this era we're in too, is depth is pressed even more.
We can go on a little rabbit trail on that too, because that makes me think of last year and how we were, I think it was over 60% passing offense. And that's obviously odd for a Georgia team. And it wasn't the same the year before, but you think about it, running back wise, you were banged up all year. And you had Nate Frazier, a true freshman, who we talked about the issues at Pass Pro for most of the season. And it wasn't in a knock on Nate. It was more like he doesn't have enough time to learn that, right? It's a whole different level of offensive football from the high school level, and running backs and Pass Pro is a big part of that. And it's just not me talking. Kirby Smart talked about that a lot at length last year. So that's a good point. And when you think about that, I think it's something that you, who's played at not only college level but NFL, can teach fans when they watch games like that. That's a part you should consider, is how healthy you are at that position, or even the offensive line. You might have guys who are much better in Pass Pro than they are at moving the sticks from the run game, and you combine that with the health at running back, and it might be a reason that Mike Bobo and Carson Beck were dropping back to pass a lot.
Every coach if you ever listen, but particularly in like those behind the scenes type stuff, right? Like the Hard Knocks or whatever, and they peep into like a position room. The thing that Coach Bobo would always say, he's like, the 2 abilities I prioritize the most is dependability and availability. Are you available to play, and can I depend on you to make the plays if you're called upon to make them, right? And I think that's a lesson for life, right? But it's also just it's very specific to football, right? They will always say in those positions, like, hey, we got to know what to do. We got to know what to do. If that outside backer or that nickel, if his alignment is 2 feet inside, 70% chance he's coming. If he's coming, you're hot in this route. So if you don't have the recognition of understanding your key notes that they give you before the game, hey, that nickel, he's lined up. He's not showing blitz, but he's lined up here. 80% of the time he's coming on. If he's lined up there, I know I'm hot. And if you just think that he's over your head and you're just going to continue to run a seam route, when in reality you got to run a lookie. It's like the reason I'm running a lookie is because that nickel is going to be in the chin of the quarterback like that. And so I think that's the things when they're saying you got to know what to do. You got to know what to do. It's not Madden where you just go click a button and these guys go run the play. You say go run. It's like there is so many different complexities to the game of football that, it requires, I think, a lot from these guys to learn, particularly if they're young, right? Because it's every level you go, man, it's just like it gets more and more complex. So I always think that, I remember I was someone who didn't know all the intricacies of it coming from Massachusetts, didn't know what cover 2 or cover 3 was, right? It took me some time, but then it became an asset of mine to know what to do, when to do, and how to do it. So I think that's super important when you're talking about depth, because it's not just like, are we healthy or not?
Yeah, dude. And then I feel like in the era we are with the recruiting services, knowing so much about certain prospects, you see these guys, you hear them working out at camps, you see these guys maybe, performing spring ball, you got practice notes, your boosters are at practice or talking about it to everybody, man, you got to see this kid. But in reality, that part is kind of not talked about. It's so hard to start as a true freshman or even a redshirt freshman at this level.
Dude, I say this all the time. I'm like, it is so like what Ryan Williams did last year for Alabama. What Brock did for us, that was like what Brock did was insane. I will go to the grave saying he's one of the greatest college football players of all time.
Oh yeah,
because it was just insane what he did, and I just think it's so difficult, right? Aaron Murray was probably one of the most prepared football players I have ever been around, right? And his counterpart who was there his freshman year, Zach Mettenberger, was right up there with him. But Aaron was just so smart. But, he didn't grow from freshman year to redshirt freshman year, right? It wasn't like he grew this rocket. Like he started as a redshirt freshman and not as a true freshman because the coaches knew that the amount of knowledge in Joe Cox's brain, right, from his 4.5 years of being there before being a starter, like cannot be replaced. And I think that is something that, like, obviously quarterback's an important position, but I try to tell people all the time, like there is so much more going on, even if it looks like a routine play, right? Like we used to run polo, which is power to the strong side and lead to the backside, depending on what they give us and where the shade was on the line of scrimmage. And it's like, it looks like a very basic play, right? Like, okay, just hand the ball off to Gurley, let him go run somebody over. But in reality, the things that we had to really Murray, but in the offensive center and David Andrews and so on and so forth, they're processing information in real time to make sure that we are in the right play at that moment, given what the defense gives us. Mm-hmm. So again, I get fired up about this because this is like diving into the weeds, but I think that's like, I think that's stuff that like I think about when I watch football, right? Like why didn't that play work, or what do we need to do, or what adjustments need to be made, or hey, maybe these guys just aren't picking up and they don't know enough to where they can run the plays they want to run to be effective. So fans at home, keep that in mind when you're yelling at the TV and throwing beer cans at your plasma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love when you get into the weeds, you call them. It's good stuff, man. Honest expectations, kind of our theme of our show. Mm-hmm. Honest expectations for this spring game. Obviously, we don't care about the outcome. We're looking at players. Can they win their battles? We got a lot of positional battles on this team right now. We will all summer and into fall camp. So we're looking on who might have the edge. We're looking at some ability that maybe there is a 1%er on this team already. We talked about the 99% of guys who cerebrally they need to get up to speed to have their best potential and to make a difference. And then you have your 1%ers, your Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Brock Bowers, Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, Ryan Williams at Alabama last year. Those 1%ers who they might not know exactly where to be, but they have the otherworldly talent to just make up the difference. And there might be some of those guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like an Isaiah Gibson on the edge, Elijah Griffin on the defensive line, Talon Taylor receiver, the 5-star receiver signee. Those guys might have it. We might get a glimpse of that. So that's why it is exciting, and it's enough to talk about. But here's my expectations. Already stop me whenever you want, and I'll throw it to you. But I think just based on the returning guys who have been in this system for a while, the questions and maybe some injuries up front for Georgia on the offense, I think the defensive line, first team, second team, I think line of scrimmage wise, they're going to play well, and they probably will control the line of scrimmage, I think, for the most part. Monroe Freeling, Daniel Calhoun, right? Those are projected starters. They're out with injuries up front for Georgia. I do think Drew Bobo, we've talked about him. He's gotten some rave reviews this spring, which I'm happy for that kid, because the way he talked about just wanting, this is his dream, is just to play at Georgia, right? And
awesome.
It's not surprising to hear that, but it is cool. And I think we talked about that last week. That's a good trait to have when you're fourth quarter or 8 overtimes in against Georgia Tech. And then Michael Morris, Ernest Green, I think they'll play well. I'm really excited about Michael Morris. I think this is his year. He's got to stay healthy, though, that there at guard. I think he has a guard spot locked up. And then Ernest Green, he's back and hopefully healthy. I think he'll have a good showing. Not sure exactly what percentage he's at from that injury, but we'll see. Edge-wise, who's going to step up here? It's a big question, right? You had some transfers. Basically 90% of your sack production's gone, right? Who's going to step up? You got the talent, man. You recruit. As far as front seven, Georgia recruits the best in the nation. All right, and those are big parts of those top 2 recruiting classes you see at Kirby Smart. That defensive line, that front seven, linebacker room, all that stuff. I mean, you recruit so well. You're just lacking experience. Quintavious Johnson, Gabe Harris, Darren Ikenagbon. I got it that time. Isaiah Gibson. Those guys, were watching them closely. I think the biggest thing for me, man, is can you win on your one-on-ones, right? Against these, because you got talent on the opposite side, baby, right? You got talent all over this offensive line too. Can you win your one-on-one battles? Can you be in the right spot? And I'm sure that these guys are going to be getting earfuls from Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart and co, right, for not being in the right spot and run support. Georgia wasn't great in the run defense last year. We all know the numbers. They weren't good. They weren't typical Kirby Smart team numbers, especially not even close to the national championship teams last year. It's something that Georgia's focused hard on. Kirby Smart's talked about, and you heard from practice, spending a lot of time on run game offense, rush defense. So that's a big thing for me too. I think when you think about edge and stopping the run and setting the edge, doing what you're supposed to do, and while you're on the field, really in the first place, beyond just the sacks, right? I don't have to see sacks. Already, it's amazing when you think about Georgia's, even the legendary 21 defense. They weren't up there in sacks, but they just affected the quarterback so much, right? That's what you want. Let's just affect the quarterback, man, and close the run game.
Yeah, and if you go back to if you were to look at the stats back then, right, and it's because the quarterback knew there was so much pressure coming that he would just get rid of the ball, right, or like take a TFL, or just like because I always think about Sam Darnold, the old Sam Darnold, when he was playing the Patriots defense. Man, I'm seeing ghosts out there. It's a real thing, dude. And that kind of leads me to my predictions, hopes, expectations, however you want to describe it. Is, I really want to see these quarterbacks kind of take command. And I think that was always, you think about the development of each player is so big in spring ball, but I really think when quarterbacks take that next step and become like, this is my team, I'm the leader, not in a cocky way, but, in a confident way where it's not you exerting confidence or displaying confidence, but rather you've already earned it. And everyone around you in that locker room and on that field has confidence in you. And thus you are displaying confidence because everyone else is just like, oh, he's got it. Like, he's the guy. Like, hey, we're locked in on him when he's speaking in the huddle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see it, right? I'm not necessarily saying that Beck didn't have it, but there were times where I was just like, man, this team is a bit rudderless here, right? And I really want to see, hey, is Ryan going to be the rudder of this team, right? Is it going to be our Georgia boy, Mr. Georgia himself, right? And I think that's going to be interesting to watch. And then I think the second thing is what goes hand in hand in the quarterback's ability to play at a high level and feel confident in their teammates for them to be confident in their play is the offensive line. You mentioned, Drew Bobo, right? I think I talked about earlier in the show about, hey, knowing what to do, when to do it, right? The offensive center is it's definitely the second most important position on the field without question. And depending what kind of identity you want your team to have, it's like 1B to the quarterback, right? If you want to run the ball a lot and be physical at the point of attack and assert your dominance, that offensive center position is incredibly important because they set the tone. But not only that, they're working with the quarterback, right? Whenever you see the head whip back there, and he's got one pinky on the football, and he's talking to the quarterback, and the quarterback is talking to him. They're getting in sync to, hey, we have a shade here, linebackers here. Let's get into the right run, right? Let's go power two or lead away, or let's go zone, or hey, let's get out of the run entirely and go quick game, right? And I think that's going to be a huge benefit for these young quarterbacks, right? Because Drew Bobo, he might not have a lot of playing time. That dude knows football, right? Like he's been understanding how the game works since he was a kid, right? And so I think that's going to be a huge benefit. It's probably why he's going to play and play well. And there's probably a lot more talented offensive linemen that have come through Georgia than Drew Bobo. But Drew Bobo, similar like the David Andrews of the world, right? The Van Jones of the world. It's like they were up here first and foremost. And I think that's going to play a huge role, not just for the offensive line, but the offense writ large. And I think it's going to help the quarterbacks have confidence in what they're doing, because they're going to be like, hey, at the very least, I know the offensive line is squared away, so I can worry about everything else. And I think that's going to be huge.
100%. That's what you hear, folks, here on UGA Football Live, streaming live on X, Facebook, and YouTube, is watch the center. Okay. All right, write it down. All right, for my to-do list for G-Day as I sit in those stands, I'm watching the center play.
I'm just saying, man, if you like ball, ball. It's like you'll see where it's at. I mean, obviously, you want to see. I'll be looking at the tight ends as always, because that's where my eyes naturally go. And I think the running backs, I would like to see them be a running back by committee. I'm just too bearish on the wide receivers, not because we don't have talent, but just because it's like we've been lost in the wilderness since McConkey and
A.D. Mitchell
and Bowers. Bowers was a receiver, and he was everything. Since those guys left, man, it's insane. You just want to be like, just go take it. Like there is this whatever you want to be as a receiver at Georgia is there for the taking, and no one seems to be taking it. So
yeah.
My attention is elsewhere.
So, and we already talked about kind of in-depth tight ends earlier, so I won't stick on this long, but I think it's a special group. I think it could be par with, because number 19, Brett Bowers, you're not going to get, it's a generational talent, folks. So expecting that output, I think, is highly unfair and probably just unrealistic. But as a group, I think they can be really special and the best in the country. But we're watching Jaden Riddell, Ethan Barber, and Ellis Williams closely, because we know what we get with Oscar Delp. I think we know what we get with Austin Lucky at this point with how many snaps they've had. Moving on, and you mentioned receivers, and I think this is going to be a really interesting kind of barometer for what these guys can do, because obviously they're going to have to show that they know what they're doing and be in the right spot. And like you said, you were talking about the different route situations you can be in, and we'll look at that too, but the coverage battles here are going to be really interesting. Give them some stiff competition. Like you're going against Dalen Everett, an all SEC corner. You're going against Daniel Harris, a highly recruited dude who did some good things last year, had a good spring. Ellis Robinson, talked about him earlier, had a really good spring, put on some weight. I think Daniel Harris, Ellis Robinson, beyond just coverage, but what they can do tackling is the key for them. But DeMelo Jones as well too. There's been some great battles with all these receivers, and Dylan Bell, Zach Branch, Noah Thomas, and Scobie White, London Humphreys, Colby Young, Talon Taylor, C.J. Wiley. All those names can start. And the ones who might not start in the fall, could start at other programs, right? Mm-hmm. The talent's there. Show me you got it. I expect just the coverage battles to go either way. I think both sides are going to make some big plays, but I think in the red zone, you're going to see Colby Young and Noah Thomas really do their thing. Big body guys who can just, they're possession guys, right? They don't drop many, and that's what you want as a Georgia fan. Limit the drops, baby. Limit as much as possible. And I'll touch on QBs here. Artie, you basically read my note, and so I love where your head's at. But command, that's what I had down too. Quick decisions being made, right spot, obviously, but operation within the offense. Show me that command. And I think we'll see this. I kind of want, because it doesn't count, I kind of want Stockton to just make a horrific mistake early, like a horrible interception. Throwing a cross body over the middle late, something like that. And it's a pick six. I'm watching body language. I'm watching his teammates. And then obviously the next possession. What does he look like? And I think he answered well. Remember that SEC championship interception that was just horrendous, was pretty much what we're talking about. He showed that he could, right the ship on the next possession. He seemed unfazed. That's why we love Stetson Bennett. That's a part of why he was just beyond just being an awesome quarterback for a couple of years. Georgia fans loved him because he was unfazed. And the whole cell phone thing at Tennessee, he became a legend right there. And we want to see some of that.
Very few people on earth are like Stetson in a good way, and probably low-key, obviously great athlete, but because his mindset was the way it was, he's probably one of one, if that makes sense. But I'm with you. Keep going. No,
you're good. And exactly, right? But I think he was so good at keeping his teammates in the game that way. Just like unfazed, right? And Carson, I think last year, and listen, I'll give Carson the benefit of the doubt because we spent some time talking about receiver issues, and that plays such a big part of more than statistically we can tell of how that affects the mind of the quarterback. One, beyond just, hey, receiver has the yips, you still got to trust him, you still got to throw it. But yeah, the gunner he's going to need some help from these receivers. But I want to see his body language and how he reacts to a mistake, and I think we'll know from that point if he's operating with command in this offense. But in my final note here, just quarterbacks, we'll end it here on honest expectations. But I think there's going to be a subset of fans after this spring, after this game. They're going to walk away and be like, I want Puglisi to start. I want Ryan Puglisi to start. Just because arm talent. It just jumps out at you. It's kind of like one of those Matt Stafford things to where the way he delivers it, the speed, and the deep ball that comes with it is going to just be so sexy, right? That you're going to have people wanting him to start just for that reason. I don't think he will. I don't think he should, based on what I'm hearing. We haven't seen him, right? But just the command that I think Gunnar Stockton's going to have is what separates him. It should be a gap there because of that. But I think there are going to be some guys who are going to really be asking for Puglisi to start.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the insanity of fans whom I love, and this is a shout out to fans. The phrase that the SEC has coined, it just means more, is not because the athletes. It's not because the presidents of the universities or the head coaches, it is because of the fans, the dedication and the passion that they have for their schools and their programs. With that being said, the expectations and the stuff that comes out of their mouths after spring games is so insane, and it's one of the reasons why I love them. But there were a few calls for Aaron Murray's job of some of the guys who ended up not even playing quarterback at the end of their careers after some strong showings. I do think it's important for Ryan to play well because, A, we need a contested competition within a QB room is huge because you want rising tides lift all boats, right? You want to push each other, lift each other up, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, you need to have a solid number two. And if you don't, it's then you go fishing in the fall, and it's and it can disrupt some flow of the team, and you don't really. Then you're worried about how you practice with, and at the end of the day, one of the reasons why some of the best teams are able to do what they do is because their number two is obviously not good as number one or ready to play as number one, but they know that if something happens in a snap that number 2 can go in there and play some ball, right? And I think that's very important, and I think that's huge. But I think Gunnar Stockton really needs to set himself apart, and I think he has. But it's a team game for a reason, and I'm not going to belabor the wide receivers again, but it's as someone who wasn't always crapping on Carson Beck last year, because I don't think it was entirely his fault. The receivers got to step up, and someone's got to take the reins and be the guy. And as soon as one guy sees somebody else be the guy, they now want to be the guy, and they raise their level of play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. And looking forward to the competition in that aspect.
Totally.
100%,
man.
That's why I'm glad we got spring ball. Exactly.
Yeah, we would see the amount of fights that would happen in spring ball is insane. It's insane. Like we would, heated, dude. Heated. We're talking like helmets thrown, fists thrown, and then we would get off the field, and because we're all psychopaths, we'd go to the locker room and start laughing at each other like lunatics because we'd be like, "Oh, it's over," right? But you hit your friends long enough, you just begin to hate them for like that 3-hour block.
Yeah.
And then you got to go eat dinner with them, and then they're sleeping in the same house because you guys are roommates. And you're just like, one day we'll get Christian Robinson on here when he's not at one of our rivals. And he'll tell you, he's like, man, I used to hate, but I'd see your big ass line up and I'd be getting my reps in because I just know you, even if I wasn't even in like your line of sight, you were coming just to like mess with me. And that's how it was, dude. And that's the beautiful thing about spring ball.
Yeah, dude. And we're going to see, hopefully, and the weather looks pretty good for now, we're going to see a great day of ball in Sanford Stadium. And with that note, remember, folks, Dog Walk, I think it's 11:50 a.m. kickoff at 1 this year, and get your tickets $10 and go on GeorgiaDogs.com. Not bad. Maybe that's going to NIL, maybe for more receivers. We don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Good show. Appreciate that, Artie, and your insight, man. Get in the weeds, dude, of football, talking ball, baby. Every time.
Got to in the offseason, man.
Yes, sir. As far as our show schedule, we're going to do a takeaways show on Monday. That's the plan for April 14th. G-Day takeaways, our notes, what I saw when I was there, what I learned. Hopefully we learned a lot. And then we'll be back for the NFL draft. We'll do a little draft preview here, and that's coming up. Excited about that. A bunch of dogs projected high in this draft, so I love it. Until next time, Artie, appreciate it.
Go Dogs.